Alright, what's going on today, guys? Daniel, Mr. Cuervo Racing. Today I'm going to show you how to adjust the TPS input, do a throttle calibration, as well as a idle stop screw and air bleed screw adjustment after you do throttle body install. So basically, swap the throttle body on this bike. It's got a few other modifications. This is the normal adjustment I would do and the things you need to check after doing a throttle body swap. So I'm going to show you a few tools that we are going to be using. A pair of channel locks, Phillips screwdriver, and a 10mm wrench, as well as a T25. And this is the security or tamper-proof style tip on there. So the TPS right now, as you can see, the throttle position says 4, it's off. We need that to say 0. The sensor voltage, this is like your fine calibration. Your center voltage needs to be set to where this factory parameter is. Now this may change a little bit. 0.66 to 0.9, 0.66 to 0.69 is kind of the window that is normal, and 3.9 on the high end. Sometimes these numbers will be a little bit different than that. I don't recommend using these arrows or pushing reset. It is difficult to calibrate that properly without doing it on a dyno to where you can go full throttle while that sensor is active. Sometimes on some of the systems, okay, like on this one right now, it will give me when I go full throttle, it'll give me that adjustment, but sometimes it's not active. But anyways, we will come back to that so we're not rambling on too much, and I will show you my first adjustments, what I'm doing. So first thing first is warm up the bike to operating temp, and we are going to fire up the bike. ATV four-wheeler. I know some of you guys get mad at me for saying bike, but gonna fire it up, and we are gonna check throttle cable adjustment first. All right, here we go. So if you push on this cable and you have any change in RPM, you need to loosen or give it more slack. And what we do is rotate this cable in to do that. So we will rotate that in, snug that down, restart it. And keep adjusting it in until when you twist on the cable, it does not rev up the engine anymore. So all right, once we get to that point, we can snug that adjustment down. Okay, from there what we do is come down here on the throttle body, and we're going to do two different adjustments here. Let's see what's going to be easier. I think I can do it this way. So we have our idle air bleed screw with the spring on it, and then we have our idle stop screw with this 10mm nut. So we're going to do two things. Loosen that, which I already did. We're going to start the bike, and then we're going to rotate out counterclockwise the idle air bleed screw until there's no real tension on it anymore. So let's do that, and we're going to see if the idle speed comes down or not. Alright, so the idle speed came down some, and this is almost all the way falling out. See there, it just fell out. So it was only in a turn or so. So basically we back that all the way out until there's no tension on it. And the next thing we need to do is set the idle stop screw. So we will come back to adjust the idle air bleed screw. We're going to adjust the idle stop screw. So we're going to start the bike. We are going to adjust this screw out till the bike almost dies. And that is our point where we want to stop at. We're at the point where the bike is barely idling, about 1200 RPM, and we are going to tighten this nut back down. Now, sometimes the screw inside here likes to jam up with the nut, so sometimes you have to hold that with your plier or a flat blade and break the nut loose from that screw. So sometimes it'll adjust in. You can kind of see as I'm turning that, the screw wants to rotate with me, so we recheck that after we tighten it down. And in this case, that idle went up too far, so we will readjust this. We'll back it off a little bit too far and see if we can get that at that sweet spot where that bike is barely running. Try that again. Alright, so there we are. This bike actually idles pretty good. It's got a little bit of compression in it, so it does help. So what we're going to do now is this one is done. We are going to now adjust our idle speed. We're going to set it to about 1750. Normally the bikes with a little bit of cam in them, we'll give them a little bit more idle speed so they don't stall. So I'm going to start the bike and do that adjustment. And we're going to rotate this screw clockwise. So now that that's done, it's within its range where the rider can reach down, turn the screw in and out a little bit to fine tune where exactly they want it to idle at, depending on their needs and terrain and what else. Just rechecking a screw here that we had loose earlier. Alright, so the next thing we are going to do, now that we have that set, we are going to adjust the throttle position sensor. So let's look at that voltage, see where we are at when we are on. So right here we are showing 3. That needs to be turned down to 0. So right here, it's kind of hard to see on this screen, but that says 0.74. We are going to lower or adjust the TPS voltage to where it's down to 0.66. So let's come over here on the other side. So right here, got 2 screws. This top one's a little tough to get at. We gotta go sideways, but we're going to loosen that loosen this lower. So we're backing it off about a turn and a half. Will give us some adjustability. And you see how these holes are slotted? We can rotate this TPS and get a different voltage. So we're just recentering its position. So we will look back at the screen there, and without being able to read that voltage, basically rocking back this TPS to where it lands barely at 0. So when we're there, I'm going to just apply light pressure on the throttle and kind of see if that corresponds, or if it starts to go up as I barely give it throttle. That'll know that I am very close, and we will come over and double check our voltage. So we are, you see it bouncing around a little bit, but 0.659, 0.660 is very, very close to where we need to be. So we will tighten down that screw, the 2 screws on the TPS, recheck, make sure that it didn't move, and go on to the next step. All right, so those are tight. We're gonna run through throttle position range, make sure that it is going up to 100% at full throttle. So if we ended up, say, at 95%, say we're like right here and that's full throttle, we may want to check our throttle stops screw here for full throttle, make sure that is not hindering the throttle from opening all the way. If that doesn't fix it, we would recheck our cable adjustment, make sure that we didn't put too much slack in that lever. If that doesn't fix it, after we verified we're getting wide open throttle, sometimes we go in here, and sometimes these numbers will say like 4.0, and this is inputted by Power Commander in their software or firmware. It's already in the system. So sometimes we would go in here and change this number. So on your computer, you could change that to, well, let me show you a little long ways here, but let me show you if that was 4.1. So if that's 4.1 and we go full throttle, see how it's only 97%? We can't quite get to 4.1. If you're just set up like that, you can back down that maximum voltage just a little bit, or just making really small adjustments, and that should fix that problem. Make sure that it is at 100%. So that's how we do that. A little bit long on video. Make sure it's warmed up all the way is the key. And that is how we set idle speed adjustment, throttle position sensor, idle air bleed screw, and then we can go on and properly tune the bike or have it start and idle properly without revving too high, and go on from there. So we are going to dyno tune this bike right now. Just got a standard map in here, and let's get it dialed for the parts it has. So we will see you on the next one.